Do you live on a lake that draws down in the wintertime and it's the fall and you're having a hard time catching fish, but you're fishing crankbaits and spinnerbaits and topwaters and other shad imitating baits? Well, maybe you're actually missing the bite by not fishing a jig. Hang on, let's talk about it. Let's go fishing. Look at that one. Woo-hoo. And who says they don't eat a jig in the fall? Don't believe them. Now, I'm not going to say that fishing a crankbait or a spinnerbait or topwater or something else that looks like a shad isn't going to work in the fall, because it certainly does. And sometimes those fish really do get keyed in on shad. But there's a time that these fish will key in on crawdads, and that's when your lake is just starting to be drawn down. Now, why is that? Well, those fish are keying in on that crawdad migration. Those crawdads that are up there at the bank and, down to 1 or 2 foot of water. Well, when that water gets pulled off their heads, they're going to start migrating down, and those fish are going to sit there looking for those things. And sometimes they can be real shallow when they bite. There's number 2 on the old jig. Look at that one. All right. Oh, look at that one. How about that? On the old jig. They'll bite it in the fall. Let's talk a little bit about the jig that I like to throw, and the size and the weight. Today I'm throwing a 5/16 ounce jig, and the reason I'm throwing kind of a lightweight jig is because I'm fishing it pretty shallow, and I really don't want it to get hung up. And that's, I guess, a little extra tip there is if you're throwing a jig or whatnot up in the rocks and whatnot and you're getting it hung up, just downsize it in the weight a little bit and see if that don't help you get unhung a little bit. There's number 3. Oh boy. Are you recording up here? Look at that. There's another one with a jig hanging in his mouth. How about that? I don't know. It works in the fall. That's all I gotta say. So the color I'm throwing today, it's just a brown jig, and if you want to know how I tie this thing up, it's a custom skirt. Go check this video out right here and see how I do that. But anyways, as far as colors goes, I kind of subscribe to the theory of that there's brown jigs and black jigs, and every now and then I'll throw a white jig if I'm throwing a swim jig or something. But just keep it simple, and don't overcomplicate the jig fishing. It certainly doesn't need to be that way, because they'll bite a black or a brown jig just about all the time. So one thing about fall fishing is sometimes you gotta keep on the move, because those fish, they're probably biting somewhere. It's just you gotta figure out where that is, and sometimes it's just a matter of moving from the back of a pocket or creek or something out onto the main lake, or vice versa, or whatnot, and trying channel swings or points or cuts or whatever, and just keep moving until you find those fish. And once you find them, just start running that pattern around the lake, and you should be able to catch fish all day, hopefully. Now the retrieve I'm using, well, it's not your typical jig retrieve where you let that thing hit the bottom and then you kind of hop it along and drag it and whatnot. Well, that works too, and sometimes you need to experiment with that. But today what I'm doing is I'm pitching that thing out or casting it, and I'm letting that jig hit the bottom, and then I'm just kind of doing a slow wind and shaking my rod tip every now and then, and I'm just trying to keep that jig about a foot off the bottom. And it's really a swim technique, but it's not the traditional swim technique where you kind of shake it a lot and move it along pretty quick. It's just kind of slow and subtle, and it's a little bit of a finesse deal. Go. So the last little key here, making this pattern work in the fall, is after your lake starts getting the drawdown on it and that crawdad migration starts, the other thing is you got to have the right conditions. You either have to have some wind blowing or overcast skies, or first thing in the morning. If it's bright and sunny and calm out, this deal probably is not going to work. But if you've got a little bit of wind blowing and some chop on the water and some cloud cover and whatnot, this really might be the deal to get you a few bites in the fall, especially if you've been fishing crankbaits and spinnerbaits and whatnot, and you haven't had any luck on that, and you're like, man, they're just not biting today. Well, pick that jig up and start swimming around up in the shallow waters around points and some wood and whatnot, and see if you can't find a few. They're there, they're eating. You just got to figure out what they want for the day, and some days it's crawdads. Anyways, I'm Rodney with eFishin. If y'all like this thing, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you share it out to your buddies, and hope you guys catch a few fish. We'll catch y'all out on the water sometime. We're out. There's another one on the jig. Not very big, but you know, it's all right.